In this video, we'll be taking a look at 3 college basketball games happening on December 17, 2025, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 4 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 3 college basketball games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start, if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Creighton versus Xavier. You have Creighton walking into Cintas Center right as conference play starts, and that building is not exactly known for hospitality. The place is packed tight, loud, and pretty unforgiving to visiting teams, and Xavier has turned it into one of the more reliable home floors anywhere, sitting in the neighborhood of an 84% overall home win rate and close to 78% in conference play since it opened. Xavier comes in at 8-3 on the season, riding a 5-game heater after that emotional crosstown shootout win over Cincinnati and a comfortable tune-up against Missouri State. Creighton shows up at 5-5 with a schedule that feels like it was built by someone who hates easy nights, with losses stacked against Gonzaga, Baylor, Iowa State, Nebraska, and Kansas State, and a neutral site win over Oregon tucked in there as a reminder of the ceiling. On paper, that looks balanced, almost coin-flippy, but when you zoom out a little, the texture of those 10 games looks pretty different. Creighton's season has been a lot of almost. They have been shoved into one high-level test after another, and in a strange way, that kind of gauntlet can mess with a team's rhythm. It is the kind of stretch where you feel like you are constantly trying to prove something instead of just playing. Their scoring margin sits only a couple of points on the plus side, and you can feel that in how their games swing. When the shots wobble, the whole thing tilts, especially on the road, where they have just one win so far and have already eaten a double-digit loss at Nebraska. Xavier, on the other hand, looks and feels much more settled than you would expect from a group under a first-year head coach. They score in the high 70s, allow low 70s, and the numbers match the eye test. They play with pace, but not chaos, and there is a sense that everybody knows what the shot is supposed to look like on each trip. At home, they are 7-1, and that record does not come from cupcake scheduling. It comes from a style that really feeds off the crowd. You see it in that long second-half run against Missouri State, when the game was still kind of sticky and suddenly the place erupted, the ball started popping, and the visitors just disappeared from the game for 5 minutes. Oddsmakers have framed this like a close one, listing Xavier as only a small home favorite, roughly a single possession on most boards. That number tells you the market respects Creighton's strength of schedule and the idea of positive regression. It also hints at where the pressure sits. When a team has already dropped a few high-profile games, like Creighton has, every league opener starts to feel like a must-hit, and that can make you a little tight if the first few shots rim out. Xavier does not have that same weight on its shoulders tonight. They have already banked a rivalry win, already proven that Cintas is still a problem, and can lean into the just keep doing what is working mindset rather than chasing a statement. Against the spread, the contrast is pretty blunt. Xavier sits at 6-5-0, trending hot lately, while Creighton is 3-7 and has struggled to turn effort into tickets cashing. The matchup history leans Xavier's way in this building too, both straight up and on the number, and that matters when you are talking about a line that lives in that fragile 2 to 3 point window. In a game where the home team already has the crowd, the comfort, the confident offense, and a defense that has quietly turned into a solid outfit, that kind of short spread feels more like an invitation than a trap. If this turns into a crunch time game, you trust the group that has already been finishing games well and has that home whistle rhythm. If it does not, and Xavier gets on another one of those second-half runs, the number can vanish in a hurry. As our first pick for this matchup, the Xavier Musketeers to cover the spread as favorites is our full-game side pick. The books have been hanging numbers in the low 150s, expecting something closer to a track meet than a grind. On the surface, the raw math makes sense. Xavier averages in the high 70s, Creighton in the mid-70s, both allow low 70s, and if you just mash those together, you get something that lands right in that 150-ish pocket. It is like looking at the over-under and thinking, yeah, that adds up, which is exactly how totals want to trick you. Here is the thing though, how those points show up really matters. Xavier's offense is smooth, but their defense is not some turnstile, and they have already shown they can clamp down for long stretches, like that Missouri State game where they turned a tight contest into a blowout by simply refusing to give up clean looks for 10 minutes straight. Creighton has shown a very different scoring personality. When the ball is moving and the confidence is there, they can hang a big number, as they did in that hot shooting win over Nichols or the Oregon game in Las Vegas. But when they step up in class, that same group can get dragged into mud, like the 50-point showing at Nebraska or the rough offensive nights against Baylor and Iowa State. If you are trying to read the total, Creighton's recent trend is basically a big blinking careful sign. The under has hit in 8 of their last 10 overall, and that is not some tiny sample from 2 weird games. It is who they have been so far this season. Their offense has been streaky, their defense good enough to keep things respectable even when the shots misfire, and the combination has turned a lot of nights into slow-motion grinders. Meanwhile, Xavier's reputation is more of an over team, and they have indeed gone above the total in 6 of 11 with an average combined score right in the low 150s, but even they just played a Missouri State game that landed comfortably below the number despite a big second-half push. That tells you that their defensive improvement is not just a talking point, it is actually showing up on the scoreboard. Conference openers can also lean weird. There is fresh scouting, coaches throw in a wrinkle or two, and both teams feel each other out early. Xavier will want to run, sure, but they also know Creighton has struggled when forced to execute in the half court against physical defenses. Creighton will want clean looks and to avoid letting the game turn into one of those wild Cintas shootouts where the home team lives at the line late. Put that together, and you get a game script where both sides care a little more about not giving away easy buckets than about creating a fireworks show. You can still get some scoring runs, because both offenses are too capable not to, but across 40 minutes the balance tilts towards something a bit flatter than the market's headline number. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Vanderbilt versus Memphis. Vanderbilt heading into Memphis feels a bit like the hot pickup hooper walking into a serious money game. Same swagger, higher stakes. They come in at 10-0, hanging about 95.4 points a night and clearing 80 in every single outing so far, which is not a lucky week. That is who they are right now. It has not exactly been candy schedules either, with that 105 spot dropped on Lipscomb and a controlled, grown-up win over a physical SMU team by a score of 88-69, where they handled the moment, controlled the tempo, and never really looked rattled. If you pull up Ken Pom or Torvik on a second screen while you watch, you see what your eyes probably already suspect. A top 5 level offense, a top 30 type defense, and a tempo that lives in that comfortable top 50 zone. Fast enough to stress you, steady enough to stay organized. The fun part is that it is translating to actual scoreboard damage, not just pretty numbers on an analytics page. Vanderbilt has been smashing people by more than 22 points per game on average, and has already shown their style travels, with a 3-0 mark away from home heading into this trip to FedEx Forum. On the other side, Memphis feels like that talented but moody friend your betting group keeps talking itself into, then rage texting about afterwards. A 4-5 overall record but 4-1 at home. A huge win over Baylor built on toughness and offensive boards, and then a rough night when Louisville lit them up from deep. Their profile looks more like a top 60 style defense paired with an offense sitting outside the top 100, which is why their scoring margin so far hovers almost right around even, sometimes impressive, sometimes frustrating. Here is the thing that quietly tilts the scale for spread watchers. Vanderbilt's core rotation comes in clean, their main guys active, while transfer guard George Kimball III is effectively removed from the equation for the whole season as a redshirt while he rehabs that knee, so he was never part of the realistic minutes map for this matchup anyway. Memphis has been living with more uncertainty in the backcourt, with Curtis Givens III dealing with a thigh issue and Julius Thedford working back from a knee problem, both having missed time and still sitting in that annoying questionable or day-to-day bucket on public injury reports in the lead-up, which is not ideal when you already lean more into grit, offensive rebounding, and scrappy creation than clean, polished half-court execution. When you blend that with the tactical contrast, Vanderbilt's line of experienced guards, modern spacing, and that we can still get to 80 even when the jumper is not behaving vibe, like in the Central Arkansas win, versus a Memphis side that is still piecing together stable offense but trying to muscle extra chances on the glass, you start to see how the matchup plays out over the full 40. Then you glance at the actual market number, with Vanderbilt laying around 7.5 points on the road at books like FanDuel and the usual odds screens, and it feels much less like a coin flip and more like a question of whether the more stable, more efficient group can turn small runs into real separation instead of nursing a 1 or 2 possession cushion all night. As our first pick for this matchup, the Vanderbilt Commodores to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Vanderbilt's offense does not really do slow burn very often. It hits the gas, checks the mirrors later, and so far it has been rewarded for that personality. 10-0, scoring 95.4 points per night, never dropping below 80 even when things get messy like that Central Arkansas outing where they still climbed into the low 80s, and in the Lipscomb blowout they casually walked to 105 without looking like they were forcing it. Tempo-wise, they live in that sweet spot coaches talk about in film sessions, where you play fast enough to generate extra possessions, but you are skilled and organized enough to turn those extra possessions into something more than empty trips. Memphis, for all their inconsistency, is not some grinded-out relic from another era. Their pace sits around the national mid-zone on Ken Palm, and when they play at home, especially when they are crashing the glass hard, they are absolutely willing to run and make it a game of sprints and whistles rather than slow half-court sets every time. You can see that in the box scores everyone has been passing around. That Baylor win finished 78-71, 149 total points, even with both sides shooting under 50% from the field. And then the Louisville loss turned into a fireworks show at 99-73, 172 total points, when the Memphis defense leaked threes and the game got stretched out. So when a team like Vanderbilt, one of the best scoring units Memphis has seen so far, walks into that kind of environment, the scoreboard has a habit of getting busy. Projection models that strip the names off the jerseys and look at pure data, the sort of things you see from betting analytics sites or simulation tools, land this matchup in the mid-160s, something like an 89-76 type combined profile, which is less about the exact margin and more about the total volume of points both sides are expected to put up. Stylistically, that makes sense when you picture the flow. Vanderbilt wants to space the floor, hunt mismatches, and turn defensive rebounds into instant offense. Memphis wants to hit back by hammering the offensive glass, pushing in transition whenever they can, and forcing multiple actions within each possession so that even a decent initial stop does not guarantee the end of the play. That mix means more possessions, more free throws, and a very real chance of those late-game scoring boosts that bettors talk about all the time, particularly if the score lands in that mid-single-digit window where one side is stretching the game with fouls in front of a national television audience. In that kind of script, even a strong defensive stretch does not necessarily push the total down as long as both teams keep running their stuff and attacking, which nudges this matchup toward a fun, high-scoring in-state showcase rather than a defensive rock fight where every possession feels like pulling teeth. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Arizona State versus UCLA. Pauley Pavilion on a weeknight is a funny little ecosystem. The students filter in late, the TV window pushes this into that sweet spot West Coast slot, and you get this mix of laid-back Los Angeles vibe and very real pressure on the floor. Here, you have two old league rivals who now live in different neighborhoods, one wearing a Big Ten patch, the other repping the Big 12, and the books are basically shouting where they stand by hanging UCLA as roughly a 9.5-point favorite with an implied win chance close to 90% from ESPN's model. That number is not subtle. It tells you the market is leaning more on the venue and the program than on the records printed in bold next to each logo. Arizona State arrives at 9-2, and that line next to their name comes with a bit of narrative heat. They just pulled off that outrageous rally against Santa Clara in Las Vegas, wiping out a 17-point halftime deficit and turning it into an 82-79 win that tied a school record for biggest halftime comeback. That is the sort of game that lives rent-free in bettors' heads for a few days. Stack that on top of a trip to Hawaii, an event in Maui with a 100-94 shootout against Washington State and an 87-86 thriller against Texas on a neutral floor, and you get a team that feels like it has been playing under bright lights, fast clocks, and scoreboards that rarely dip below the 80s. On paper, that looks like the exact kind of underdog people love to grab when they see a big plus sign next to a double-digit spread. But the whole point of this matchup is that Arizona State is walking straight into a completely different universe. UCLA's overall mark of 7-3 hides the fact that they have been perfect in their own building, 6-0 at Pauley, with those home wins coming by an average of roughly 20 points and opponents stuck mostly in that low 60s neighborhood on the wrong end of the score. You scan those home results and it is the same movie over and over again. Eastern Washington scores 74, Pepperdine 63, West Georgia 62. Then you get 48, 46, and 63 from Sacramento State, Presbyterian, and Oregon, and suddenly you realize almost nobody is breathing in the high 70s here. Layer on the season-long profile that has UCLA allowing about 66 to 67 points per game with an adjusted tempo that sits way down in the bottom quarter of Division I, and you are not really talking about pace as a preference, you are talking about pace as a weapon. Here is the thing. The market remembers Arizona State racing up and down in Maui. The market remembers that comeback in Vegas. The market remembers highlight packages. UCLA just got tagged by Gonzaga on a neutral floor, which does not look as fun on social media, but for a coach who leans defense first and tempo second, that kind of loss usually means the next serious game turns into a clinic in stubbornness. Arizona State wants rhythm, space, and transition, with all those neutral and semi-neutral floors helping them feel free so far. UCLA wants every possession to feel like a dentist appointment, especially in their own building, where they can dictate lineups, whistle management, and matchups off the bench. Over 40 minutes, that sort of game script tends to chip away at even confident underdogs. Early on, Arizona State might throw haymakers, maybe even grab a lead, but as the pace drags and possessions get longer, all those little half-court wins start stacking in favor of the home side until the gap on the scoreboard looks a lot more like the one the bookmakers suggested before tip. As our first pick for this matchup, the UCLA Bruins to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. If you only check these teams' season averages, everything screams points. Arizona State is putting up roughly 80.7 per night and giving up about 73.5. UCLA is scoring in the mid-70s and conceding around 66.7. Add those base numbers from both sides together and you land in the mid-150s, which looks like a comfortable cushion over the posted total. That is usually the moment where people start saying things like, both teams can score, how can this not fly over? Let me explain why that logic can be a trap here. A lot of Arizona State's scoring profile has been turbocharged by context. The 100-94 win over Washington State, the 87-86 edge over Texas, even the 82-79 escape against Santa Clara, all came either in Hawaii or at neutral sites that behaved like open gyms with college bands. Those environments help pace, officiating tends to be friendlier to offense, and both teams often come in with the unspoken agreement that they are here to test out their scoring more than grind each other into dust. This trip to Los Angeles is different. It is a true road game against a defense that, by both raw numbers and advanced ratings, sits in that top tier nationally and has not allowed a visitor to sniff the high 70s at Pauley this season. On top of that, tempo is not just some background setting here, it is almost the main character. UCLA's adjusted tempo sits around 65 possessions per 40 minutes, which slides them into the slowest quarter of Division I, and their home games have largely lived in that pattern. Think of those wins at Pauley as episodes of the same series. Scores like 80-74 or 74-63 feel reasonably high at first glance, but when you account for how few trips up and down the floor each side actually gets, it becomes clear that the Bruins are squeezing the life out of games rather than inviting chaos. Arizona State can score, no doubt, but they have been most explosive when the structure melts and the game turns into a series of quick exchanges. UCLA's system is built to prevent exactly that, with longer possessions, more half-court sets, and fewer clean looks in the first 10 seconds of the shot clock. There is also the human side of late-game math. Totals often get wrecked by the last 90 seconds when a one-possession contest triggers the parade of intentional fouls, rush threes, and free throws that turn a quiet under into a sudden over. In a matchup like this, if the game follows the script of a methodical home favorite gradually building and managing a lead, you get fewer of those desperation possessions and fewer free points with the clock stopped. That does not mean the offenses vanish. It simply means each team has to work harder and longer for what it gets, and the path to a true shootout probably requires Arizona State to drag the tempo away from UCLA's comfort zone in a building where nobody has managed that yet this season. When you put all that together, that 146.5 looks less like a middle ground and more like a number that assumes another Maui-style track meet, which feels like the less likely version of this story. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed. Subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.